Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Indian Boxer Ring. My name is Ishwar, and our guest today is Medley Small. Medley Small from Cinnrhee Boxers. Medley has been in the breed for over 4 decades, and she has worn the hat of owner handler and also a professional handler. Under the prefix Cinnrhee Boxers, Medley Small has finished close between 60 and 70 American, I would say, sorry, I beg your pardon, 60 to 70 Canadian champions, and most of them have been shown in the States as well as American champions. Medley has also been actively involved with the breed. She is a member of the Canadian Kennel Club, the Canadian Boxer Club, the American Boxer Club, and she's the current president of the Boxer Club of Western Ontario. Medley is also judged sweepstakes at the American Boxer Club, and she has been a part of breed seminars, and she's also a mentor recognized by the American Boxer Club. So it's a pleasure to host Medley today as a guest. Medley, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Wonderful. So, Medley, this is actually an interview for Indian boxing, as you know, and the audience are keen and interested in knowing about your journey with boxing, and that's why we thought it would actually be apt for you to have this interview. And just like for the benefit of viewers, I wanted to actually start you off with some basic questions, and then we can move on to more breed-specific questions. Um, how did you get started with boxing and with dog shows?
Well, as a young child, I had my family lived on the lake, and we did a lot of boating. And my cousin had a boxer, and I was enamored, absolutely enamored. And so, of course, I asked my parents, "Please, can I have a boxer?" And my mother was a principal in an elementary school, and one of her students was rehoming a very bad boxer. He was a tough one. He had a long tail, natural ears, but oh, what a joy! And I would say I was about 10 years old, and he lived with us until he died. And I never could look at another dog and say, this is the dog that I want as a companion. I appreciated other dogs, but the boxer was what I really wanted. So when I finished university and I moved out on my own, I seriously started, and I love the fact, I should go back a little bit because my dad was born on a farm, and they raised horses, and we as children competed at the Royal Winter Fair with my father and my uncle driving the ponies, and we would sit in the carts and just look good. And it was fun, and I that competition, and as I continued on, I had a cousin who had wolfhounds, so I started attending dog shows and eventually got my first two boxers.
Wonderful. We're going to talk about your first two boxers, but before we do that, what is are these two boxers the reason why you coined your prefix Henry Boxers?
Correct. Yes. The one was called Cinnamon and the
Hmm.
other was called Rhea.
Okay, so that explains how the name came into being. All right, wonderful.
Correct.
Um, now, in terms of the show of purebred dogs, boxers, you are a veteran in the sport, and I want you to talk about your learning curve. Because you would have learned about boxers the easy way or the difficult way. But for people who are watching this, who are new to the breed, um, I want them to understand what your learning curve was like. But I have a slight twist to this question. Would you do anything different with acquiring knowledge of dogs if you were to start all over again? What would that be?
Well, you'd always change some things, but I think when I look back at the way I began, I was lucky. I was very lucky because there were some prominent people in Canada in the breed. Shirley and Ben DeBoer were two. Uh, Shirley Bell, even though she is more my age, she had some good knowledge to begin with. And then probably the most influential was Jack Ireland. And I gravitated to those people and they gravitated to me. And so that gave me a really, really good start. And something that we did back in 30 years ago, and I don't see it done as much. The older breeders continue to do this, but the young ones don't do it as much. We sat around that ring, Krish, and we talked and we criticized positively and negatively, and we listened. And you wanted to sit with somebody like Jack, or you wanted to sit with somebody like Shirley, and they would expound their knowledge, and then you would soak it up.
Mm-hmm.
And you could take what you wanted. You didn't always have to agree, but you learned. You learned. I don't see that being done. So to say, would I do anything really differently? I probably would spend more time at ringside
Mm-hmm.
than I did at the time. There were
Mm-hmm.
fewer dog shows back then, and so when you went, you spent the whole day. You didn't just show your dog and walk out of the ring and go home. So those were things that were really, that's how I got a lot of knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that I can stress is get every book you can get. Go to every breeder that you respect and talk, ask questions, learn as much as you can. There are many good boxer books out there, many good ones. And you need to gain that kind of knowledge. You can't just buy a show dog, go to the show, and hope it wins. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way.
True, true, wonderful. Now, you touched on a point about having mentors, and so my next question to you is about mentors. Um, how important do you think it is for newcomers to have mentors? And my second part of the same question is, how can mentors effectively pass the torch on to newcomers?
Well, I don't think you can do this without
Mm,
mentors.
mm,
You have to. It has to be a situation where, um, if you, for example, I'll give you a little story. We were
mhm,
at ringside in Canada showing dogs, and I was standing with several people, and one of my friends asked a breeder, "What do you think of that dog out there?" And the first thing out of that person's mouth was, "Well, its tail is too short." And I thought, is that all you see? And
mm,
and this was a person who came, showed the dog, and went home. And I think mentors would, if I had been a mentor there, I probably would have strangled them and said, "Come on,
mm,
there's a lot about that dog that if that's all you see, don't show
mm,
dogs. Don't show
mm,
dogs." So mentors have so much knowledge.
mm,
Whether you take that knowledge and you use it or
mhm,
you discard it, they have knowledge. And these young people coming up have a tremendous advantage with the older people. When
mhm,
you go to ABC, there's a crowd of people around.
mhm,
You get to know in your area who those people are that have been showing dogs for a long time and have been successful. And
mm,
then you proceed, and you share knowledge and you ask questions.
mm,
So I think ultimately, yes, you can read. Yes, you can go to dog shows and watch. Most importantly, is sharing knowledge. Sharing
mm.
knowledge. That's what
True.
I do.
Um, I just have a add-on question to that from what you said. Um, so let's say I'm the one seeking the knowledge. How best can I use somebody like Medley? What should I be? How can I use Medley's knowledge the best in the best form or way?
Well, there again, we're in a technological age. And what
Hmm.
you're doing right now is exactly how you get that knowledge. You interview the people that you feel have the ability to share information,
Hmm.
and then we can text. We can text back and forth. You can email back and forth. You can talk to one another. But
Hmm.
this is good because we can see one another.
Right.
So it helps when you are able to impart the knowledge. And then as I'm speaking to you,
Hmm.
even though I know that we have done this previously, we've had a trial run,
Hmm.
you're coming up with things in your head and say, well, I'm going to ask her this because we're on this topic.
Mm.
So I think it's important for people to reach out. And
Wonderful.
let me just add to
Hmm.
that too.
Hmm.
There are a lot of us who are so willing to share. And it becomes, and it's easy. You like doing it, you enjoy the conversation, you think you have something to say. And there are a lot of us who don't want to share.
Mm,
And that's okay too. That's
mm,
okay too. I mean, you can't make people be a certain way. So you have to pick and choose who you're going to follow
mm.
and hopefully gain what you need to gain.
True. Very, very aptly said. True. Very true. But again, a word of warning, Medley. The viewers of Indian Boxer Ring are an interested bunch, and from what you said, you might your Facebook messages will be flooding after the interview. So yeah, you've been forewarned. So that's
Good.
coming your way. All right.
Okay.
So I want to actually move on to the breed specific questions now. My first question is it's a question that's commonly asked, and it's also stated as such about a boxer being a head breed. My question to you, Medley, is: do you think a boxer is a head breed?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. One third of the points given to the overall dog is on its head. We are unique for this. Our headpiece is a unique headpiece. And if you read both the American and the Canadian standard, the head, the most information about the boxer in those standards is
Hmm.
on the head. And my point is that you need to understand, and this is where mentoring comes in again. You need to be able to read and have that vision in your head of what that standard is saying, and then sit with someone who is experienced in boxers. And I remember sitting in the stands with Shirley DeBoer, and I would say something, and she would say, "Yep, yep," and I would say, "Well, what about that? Nope, 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 no, that's not right." And so I really learned quickly, but it takes time. You don't do this. It's the same as school. You go to
Mm,
school, you're in grade one. You don't graduate until you're in grade 12. It takes
mm,
all those years to prepare
mm,
you for your
mm.
life's venture.
Right.
Same in dogs.
Mm,
You continue to learn and continue to learn. The head in our standard, a lot of it is subjective. A lot of it is I take the information in, I know the parameters, I know what this is supposed to be, but it's my overall subjectivity, my feeling of how I view this dog.
mm,
And if you look at headpieces, North American dogs, including Canada and the United States, and even I'm going down to Mexico and Brazil, our headpieces are unique to us.
mm,
We when I showed dogs, American, this is going to sound funny. When I showed dogs, I used to say to the American owners, "What do you want to see in a boxer? I
mm,
want it to be pretty." And
mm,
that's what they, I want it to be, I want to be able to look at that dog and not go, "Oh boy, that's hard to look at." I
mm,
want it to be easy to look at. So our
mm,
headpieces are unique to us.
mm,
When you look at the British dogs, their headpieces are different. European dog headpieces are different. And I believe they should stay that way.
mm,
That's what they breed in those countries. That makes them specific to those countries, which I
mm,
think is good.
mm,
I we'll get to another question along the way about melding,
mhm,
but the headpieces is
mhm.
really, really important. It's unique to the boxer.
Right, right, right. Wonderful. That's a segue to the next question, as you had stated. Um, when you start off with a breed, as a breeder, as a young novice breeder, well, you're starting off with a breed after reading the standard. You might or might not have a blueprint in your head. When I say blueprint, a mental picture of what your ideal boxer should look like. But my next question is just that: how important is it for every breeder to have a blueprint of the dog they want to breed in the head? Now, and again, about you, the second part of this question is: has your blueprint, Bradley, of the breed changed over the years?
It really, yes, a blueprint is important because you have to have a vision in your head of what you're looking at. You
Hmm.
can look at many. as in people, we're all different. We're all
Mhm.
different. As in dogs, they're all different too. So when you read your standard, you try to envision the things that the standard says in the live dog. You're looking and saying, okay, we need a board top line, we need a higher tail set, we need this, we need that. So you look at these things and you create in your head a vision. And I, through the tutelage of Jack and Shirley DeBoer and Shirley Bell, they used to say to me, look back in the history of where we've come from and how we've changed. So, two of the dogs that stood out in my mind, of course, everybody knows who Bangway is.
Mhm.
He changed our breed. We went from a more coarse, smaller, thicker um, dog, and they were wonderful in their time, but time changes. And along came Bangaway. And all of a sudden, the smoothness was there, the headpiece changed. He was something that the fancy looked at and said, "Oh my gosh, this is what we want to breed."
Mhm.
The other dog that made, and he made a big impression. I mean, I tried to look at every picture I could possibly look at of Bangaway.
Mhm.
And then the next dog that I really, really enjoyed was Barrage of Quality Hill.
Mhm.
He won the Westminster Dog Show 3 times. He was at his time, in his time, a stallion of a dog. And
Mhm.
so in my head, I kept saying, this is what I want. This is
Mhm.
how I want to proceed. Now, since those dogs, there have been many wonderful, wonderful dogs. There really have. But I
Mhm.
think we have to go in, for me, I had
Mhm.
to go back to the beginning of where the differences started. From
Mhm.
what we started to breed until Bangaway came along, and then we started to say we want a little more elegance, we want a little more neck, we want to clean the head up a little bit so it's not so wrinkly. And I think we've done. I really think we've done well. I think we've done very, very well.
Right, right. And I think for the benefit of viewers, these two dogs are featured on the slide here. On the left is Bang Away of Sierra Crest, and to the right is Barrage of Quality Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Beautiful dogs in their time. Beautiful dogs.
right, right. Now, so my next question, Medley, is actually also about the evolution of boxers. Now, you've been in the breed, like I stated, for over 40 years. You have bred a lot of dogs. You have a blueprint in your head, and you've bred dogs which are very typey. And we're going to talk about type later in the interview. But having seen the evolution of boxers, you would have also come across theories about blending styles. Because in one of your answers before, you mentioned about the American type head or American style head. I don't want to use the word type because it's only one type but different styles. Um, American style head or European style head or English style head. People have this notion about blending these different style dogs to get the virtues. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, that was a question I gave a lot of thought to because I really never put a lot of emphasis on that.
Hmm.
Simply because we don't see a lot of the European dogs coming over. We see some, but not a lot of them. But I think, and here's how my thought process goes. We live in different countries. You lived in India. You were born in India. I was born in Canada. We look different. You maintain your look, and we know that your culture is from India.
Hmm.
I maintain mine. I'm not saying that the blending is not something that can happen, but I don't see the necessity for it. I
Hmm.
think I like to be able to say when I look at the European dogs, and I think because I've been in this so long,
Hmm.
I can appreciate what they are doing. It may not be something that I want to do, but I
Hmm.
can appreciate the fact that they have their own distinct look, and I think it should remain such. In
Hmm.
Canada and the United States and some of the southern countries, some southern hemisphere, we have what we feel is a beautiful, beautiful dog. And the problem comes when you you ask the European judges to come and judge our dogs.
Mm,
And they're not familiar. They're not familiar with them. I don't know how to. I don't know how to bridge that gap. That's a hard one to bridge. But
mm,
at the same time, the question asked: do you think these? Can we meld these? I don't. I don't see why we have to. I
mm,
really don't see. And I know we've tried. And I
mm,
know we've tried.
mm,
And I don't see that we've had a tremendous amount of success. And it might be because we haven't
mm,
had enough time to do it.
mm. Right.
But I love what I see over here. I think
Mm,
we're distinct, and when I see what's happening with Australia, the dogs, we've imported a lot of semen from different kennels to Australia.
mm,
We've done the same to Europe, but I just I want to be an individual. I want to be able to say I breed a North American dog,
mm,
and I think we should continue doing that.
mm,
So that's
mm.
a Krish, that's a good question for debate. That's
Okay.
it's a really good one. ABC should have a group of people saying, "Hey, what are your
Mm,
feelings on this?" And
mm,
it would be
mm.
a good discussion question.
Right, 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 right. Well, when IBR has a debate, I will make sure that I will invite you for that debate so that you can share your viewpoints about that. Well, for the viewers out there, feel free to post your questions to Medley in the comment section of the interview, and I'll make sure that I ask her those questions. This is your opportunity to ask a seasoned, tenured breeder like Medley, and I'll make sure I ask those questions. Just make sure that you are on the topic and don't ask something about the weather. Now, I have a question based on what you said, Medley. So we're talking about the evolution of boxers. We're talking about everybody who's read any books about boxers, the origin of boxers, know that there was a Munich silhouette that was actually created back in 1895, around about that time frame. Now, there is also a theory or notion about how boxers evolved from that. Boxers evolved in America differently, and boxers evolved in Germany differently. Being the home, it evolved differently, and UK evolved differently as well. Just a perspective of how people see it as a blueprint. But um, there's also a theory that Americans take dogs and they make it more fancy. So which according to you with the evolution has is gotten better, or which has stayed close to the original breed standard? What are your thoughts about
Well, there again, it's an opinion. It's an
that? Mm,
opinion. You look back at the dogs that are presented, 1938, 1940. They're very different than what we have today, and we're always trying to improve. But it's a personal thing. It's a look that how can I explain it? Your aesthetics, how you the beauty. We want the beauty, but we
mm-hmm,
want the functionality too. We
mm,
want the dog to be able to perform. We don't do bull baiting anymore. We don't do
mm-hmm,
that, but still, we want that big, wide jaw, and we want
mm-hmm,
that beautiful, beautiful head. I think the opinions when the dogs were brought to the United States, and I don't know how much history is on this. The evolution in the United States when they first came here to what they are now. The gene pool was not that big. The gene pool is a pretty good sized gene pool.
mm,
So maybe what happened was, as we continued to see these dogs evolve, there were more dogs brought from different countries. I don't really know because
mm-hmm,
I've read what history is there, but there's not a lot on that.
mm-hmm,
But I think what we've created now, the evolution,
mm,
it appeals to me. I
mm,
guess that's the best way to say it. It appeals to me. I love to see, I don't care who bred the dog. I
mm-hmm,
love to look in that ring and say, oh my gosh, that dog takes my breath away.
mm,
And that's, I know we all want to win, but it isn't about winning. It's about the appreciation of what we've done. And I
Right.
truly believe, after judging ABC at the Futurity, I truly, truly believe that we have done a good job. We have done a
Mm-hmm.
good job. Very good.
Wonderful. My next question is going to be about breeding. Having bred many litters, you might be familiar with this phrase called burning the midnight oil. Breeders spend countless hours researching pedigrees, or planning their upcoming breeding. They sometimes I've heard breeders plan not just the one breeding which is coming up, but three breedings after that.
That's right.
Now, this is something which is really useful for the novice or the new breeders who are going to actually plan their breeding program. What does this phrase "burning the midnight oil" mean to you in terms of planning the litter? How do you plan your litters?
Well, this is a personal thing now. This is my opinion and based on my experiences.
Hmm.
I knew when I first started, uh, I spent my first 2 years researching. I didn't have a dog. I
Mm,
researched. And maybe that 2 years wasn't long enough, but it's a lot of time spent when I compare to many of the other people how they get their starts. And so I looked, and I had a lot of help from a friend, a cousin who was a wolfhound breeder.
mhm,
So I knew what I wanted, excuse me, and I went to the kennel that I felt would give me my opportunity to a good start, to give me
mhm,
a good start.
mhm,
And once I got going, I was fortunate. I was very fortunate. I had Shirley and Ben and Jack, and the first dog I bred to. I didn't know anything, Chris. I didn't
mhm,
know anything at all,
mhm,
and they pointed the direction, and I bred to Trapper.
mhm,
I got a puppy named Mugshot, and
mhm,
he became the top puppy in Canada. My very second litter, the second litter I had,
mhm,
and I was too new to understand what the dickens had happened.
mhm,
But as I continued, I studied, and I knew once I had made a number of mistakes,
mhm.
and I kind of got caught up in handling over my breeding program, and I'm going to tell a story here because it's an interesting
Absolutely,
one.
please do.
Um, I I handled in the United States and in Canada, and there was one particular dog. For the life of me, I'm not going to remember his name, but Carmel's Mr. Countdown. That was
Mhm,
his name. Carmel's Mr. Countdown. We called him Count.
mhm,
And the gentleman that I worked for flew me everywhere. I went everywhere showing this dog. He wanted this dog finished before he was 12 months old.
mhm,
And I got sidetracked in my breeding program. And I had nothing in my kennel that was competitive. I mean, I just
mhm,
had nothing. So here's the mentoring part. I
mhm,
called Jack and I said, I need help. I need help. I'm lost. I'm off track. I want to be able to breed good dogs. So Jack's response was, I will help you if you will listen and do as you're told.
mhm,
And so he came down, and I had a kennel at the time, and he said, bring the bitches out that you're looking at. And I had 5 bitches, and I paraded them in front of him, and at the end he said, keep this one and get rid of the other 4. Well, that was hard. That was really hard. But I did
mhm,
as I was told.
mhm,
And then we bred that one to, I can't remember where we bred it, but it was a beginning. And I stayed within a gene pool of dogs, pretty much a gene
mhm,
pool of dogs.
mhm,
And it just evolved from there, and I got better and better and more knowledge. But the
mhm,
mentoring was, and I sit exactly as you say. I
mhm,
look at a breeding and say, now if I get something from this breeding, I'm going to breed it to this one, and then if I get something from that breeding, I'm going to go here. So it's
mhm,
a progression.
mhm,
I may not do it, Krish,
mhm,
but
mhm,
on paper, I make a lot of notes,
mhm,
and I will put down the dogs that I'm interested in, but
mhm,
only in the gene pool that I have access to.
mhm,
And the nice thing about breeding is once you've established a program and people recognize you're breeding in the ring and they start to use your dog. Again, it has to be discretionary. You have to look at the bitches coming in and say, this is the bitch that I want to breed to my dog. This should further my kennel and it should further their kennel. And so those are the midnight oil things that go on. You know, you're constantly thinking, where am I going to go? And then when it comes to breeding, for me, when it comes to breeding lines, I don't breed to a dog. I breed to a line because I feel that that line has experience. They've established their credibility as to what they want to breed, and I hopefully can join in. And it's worked. And I'll give you another example as to what happened. There's a kennel in the United States, Barquet, which is very tightly affiliated with Brookwood. And they've had some beautiful, beautiful dogs.
Mr. Philip Koenig, right?
Philip and Brookwood. What's her name's escaped me. I just talked to her on the phone the other day. It'll come to me. Anyway, Philip had he bred to one of my dogs, a bitch. She was a good bitch. She had a lot of good things about her, but there were things that needed to be cleaned up. And the dog had the good things that she didn't, and she had the good things that he didn't. And so we did a breeding, complete outcross. I'm not a big fan of outcrosses, but we did this. And we ended up with a litter, and there was a dog in the litter, and we named him Cinnrhee, just call me handsome, Teddy. And he was really a good dog. And so we continued on. And since then, the Cinnrhee name has met with very, very good success. That breeding clicked. It doesn't always, in fact, I would say, you know, it doesn't click always. You can take two wonderful dogs and say, oh my God, look at this. And my qualification on that, when you take two gene pools and bring them together, you're multiplying the number of possibilities. And so that in itself, you might get lucky and then you might not. When you get lucky, what happens is, I call it, you get a flyer. Can that flyer produce? And in this case, when we had Teddy, we used Teddy, and we ended up with Noah. And Christine Shackelford has Noah. And Noah did some wonderful winning. And then we ended up with Dreamer, and she also did some wonderful winning. And another Teddy puppy, Stevie. And so Philip and I were excited. We thought, my gosh, you know, this is working. This is really working. But it doesn't always go that way. You know, it just doesn't always go that way. So you sit and you think, and how am I going to do this? What am I going to do here? And so when I look and say, do I breed type to type? If I can, yeah, I do. But most often I look at a dog and say, what does this dog have that the bitch I want to breed is lacking? And what does this bitch have that the dog is lacking? And they can't be severe. They can't be severe things. You have to go in with dogs that are relatively pretty good. And they might have some faults, but not major faults. You can't go in with a really poor front and expect to get a great front. You just can't. It's just not going to work. So those are the things that are burning in your head all the time. All the time.
Right. Again, don't introduce faults. You know, by just because you're going for some one virtue, just go for something which has got virtues. No dog is perfect, but that would be the basic principle, I would say.
And you know, for the newcomers, for the people that are just starting out, and you really do want to get into this game, and it is a game, you need to acquire the dog or the bitch that is as close to the standard as you possibly can. You can't play this game with your heart. You can't. You
Right.
got to play it with your head.
Right. True. True. Now, you actually covered quite a few things about breeding principles, line breeding and outcrossing. You mentioned that, but for the benefit of somebody who is starting out with a breed, I've also heard this term that you have to start off with something good. What would you term as that good to be? Would it be a line bred bitch? Would it be an outcross bitch? What would be the best one to start with? A breeding program.
Well, let's just say that you go to a dog show and you see something in the ring that you really like, and I think to prioritize your ability to gain the knowledge, you have to do your homework first. You
Hmm.
can't. So many people get a dog and it becomes their pet, and they see these dogs. For example, oftentimes when I'm out at a gathering and people say, "Gee, Medley, you're a breeder. Can you show us your dogs?" And I'll have some dogs on my phone, and I'll bring them up, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen a boxer look like that."
Mm,
Well, then I want one. I want one. In fact, I just placed one the other day. They're interested in going to the shows, but they don't want to show him. But
mm,
he's going to be a dog that's shown.
mm,
And you have to understand that try to acquire the best you can, but that takes time. You have to understand what you're acquiring first,
mm,
and
mm,
the reading and going to shows and the mentoring all helps. So I
mhm,
think when I first started, it took me 2 years, Krish, to get the two dogs that I wanted,
mhm,
and they were decent. They weren't
mhm,
great, but they were
mhm,
decent. And so if you get an outcross, then sit down and say, okay, let's see the pedigree of this dog.
mhm,
What have I got here? If
mhm,
I decide that this is a bitch that I bought for breeding and showing, then where do I want to go? Do I want to do another outcross? No, 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 no. Let's
mhm,
stay within that line, and let's
mm,
breed this dog back to something that was it created. If you can get a line breeding,
mhm,
goody for you. Goody for you.
mm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Very, very aptly said. I want to actually ask something about, breeding boxes is not easy. You could get a white puppy. You could actually get a puppy which is, depending on the line, like you said, you can get some falls as well. So the probability of you getting that show dog or the show potential puppy is a game of probability, depending on how well the dogs you're breeding to. You might get a consistent litter, or sometimes you might get nothing. It might be a wash. Uh,
Absolutely.
Now, when you started off with boxers, I'm sure you faced some obstacles with breeding as well. But what has been, Medley, your biggest obstacle with breeding boxers, and how have you overcome that?
Well, breeding is hard to begin with because we're a head breed, and many times you end up with a C-section. I think the biggest obstacle in breeding is the understanding what can happen. What
Mm,
can happen? Everybody think, oh, you breed these dogs and you've got all these puppies and you sell them and you make all this money. No, you don't. No, you
mm,
don't. You end up with a C-section. You lose a bitch. You have to bottle feed puppies. Those are tremendous obstacles. They really are. So, and that's where the mentoring comes in. That's
mm,
where if you're with someone who has been through this and they can be with you when a litter is being born to help you understand,
mm,
you have a better chance of having a good litter.
mm,
When you get, it, and it's happened to me many times, I'll get a litter of puppies and I'll have one that has a Great Dane head. And I'll say, where did this come from? And I usually know my line, but
mm,
another thing that has to be, you have to respect Mother Nature. She's going to humble you every time. So,
mm,
you can never go into this saying, well, I know, I've been doing this 40 years. I know what I'm doing. Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't.
mm,
I've got
mm,
a lot of knowledge, but I don't have it all. That's for sure.
mm.
So
Right.
I would say the biggest obstacle in breeding is understanding what breeding is all about.
Mm,
Trying to get a dog bred. Trying to get a dog bred.
Mm.
They say, well, they come into season. The male dog knows when the bitch is ready to be bred. No, no, no,
Mm.
no. It's not always that simple.
Mm.
So there are lots of things
Mm.
that are obstacles. But overall,
Mm.
when you have a litter of puppies and things go well, and the adage too is you have these short back, pretty little cobby bitches. They're beautiful.
Mm.
You breed them, and you'll have people say, "Boy, you're going to have trouble. She's not going to have enough room to hold all those puppies. She's
Mm.
not. You want those nice long back bitches."
Mm.
Well, I've been doing it long enough. That's a myth. That's a
Mm.
total myth. And
Mm.
sometimes you'll get puppies that you expect problems or dogs that you expect problems from in breeding, and bing, within an hour and a half, 3 hours, they've had their four puppies. Bingo.
Mm. Mm.
And then others that you expect, oh, this should be a piece of cake.
Mm.
Awful. Awful. So,
Right.
it's hard. And breeding
Mm.
is not for everybody.
Right.
Yeah, it's not
True.
for everybody.
Yeah. Medley, my next question to you is actually about artificial insemination. I want to give you a little bit of premise to this question, and reason why I'm asking you this question. Um, in India, artificial insemination was not recognized till May of this year. So the parent body, Kennel Club of India, recognized artificial insemination in May of 2020. So there's a lot of thirst. There's a lot of thirst for knowledge in terms of artificial insemination, and but there's also a lot of questions as well, and that's the reason why I'm posing this question to you. Um, for starters, AI or artificial insemination has been done for many, many years in North America. Do you think that artificial insemination has contributed to the breed's preservation or progression?
Well, I think I don't know whether I would say the breed's preservation. I would say it's opened up doors that we didn't have before.
Mm.
It is so much easier now to ship frozen semen, fresh chilled, than it is to ship the dog. And
Mm.
that's the way we used to do it. We used to put the dog on a plane and ship the dog. We can't do that.
Mm.
But what it does, I think what artificial insemination does is allow us to, technology first has opened up a huge window. So we can see these dogs readily, instantly, from all over the place, all over.
Right.
And then once you've done your research on the dog, then you can say, I think I want to breed to this dog. And the AI enables you choice, much more choice than you would have had.
Mm.
So that's good. But
Mm.
then you're talking specifically about the Indian boxer ring and the breeders in India.
Mm.
And again, this overlaps into the melding.
Mm.
Do you want, as a country, that you're
Mm.
breeding these dogs and you have a specific look? Do you want to change that look? Well,
Mm.
you will if you breed to the American dogs. You're going to change. You're going to change the look.
Mm.
That's a debatable question.
Mm. Mm.
My belief is, and I've already stated it. I like the look. I can appreciate a good dog no matter where it's from.
Mm.
But the dog that I wish to breed is the
Mm.
American style dog.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Have I know, Medley, that you have tried artificial insemination yourself in your breeding program. What have been your learnings in adopting artificial insemination in your breeding program?
Well, it takes a second seat. It always takes a second seat. If I can do the natural breeding first, then that's what I will do. But that
Mm.
doesn't always happen.
Mm.
Have I been successful? Probably 50% of the time I've been successful.
Mm.
I don't think, even though doing all the progesterones and knowing the surges,
Mm-hmm.
the ideal times, it doesn't, you're disappointed. You're terribly disappointed. Now I know too that when we breed naturally, we miss.
Mm.
And why? That's nature saying
Mm.
that bitch was not supposed to have puppies. But I do artificial insemination uh, if I have a difficult bitch to breed, but
Mm.
I'll go as long as I can to get a breeding naturally before I resort to the artificial insemination.
Got it.
I think it's a wonderful tool. I do.
Mm,
I think it's a wonderful tool, but just be prepared to be disappointed because we're
mm,
not locked on to a high percentage of success yet. I
right.
feel. I feel anyway.
Got it. Got it. Wonderful. So I want to actually, we've spoken about breeding, planning a breeding, the challenges with breeding. Let's say it's like all the plants have come, resulted positively. You have a litter. Now comes the next question or the problem. Which is the right puppy to pick? That becomes the next question. Obviously, not everybody can run or keep all the puppies till they are 6 months or 8 months old. My question to you is, what according to you is the correct age to assess the true potential of the puppy? The puppy you feel is going to do well. Is that determination? Does color have any role to play in making that determination? And is it possible to achieve a kennel type specific to your breeding program?
Okay, well, let's go back to the first part of the question is how do you assess a show quality puppy?
Mm,
I have been doing this long enough, and again, this is totally my opinion,
hmm.
but long enough to know that the minute that puppy is born, I know which puppies in that litter I want to keep. I can tell right away, boy, this is the one. This is the one I want to keep. But
Mm,
that's taken a long time to get there. You know,
mm,
I was fortunate in the first litter that I had that I happened to look at this young puppy, and even though he was poorly marked,
mm,
he jumped out at me. Whether
mm,
that was a God-given talent, I don't know. But now when I breed, I look at these puppies and I say, okay, in this litter, there's one or maybe two
mm,
that I'm going to grow up. And as
mm,
they progress, things look good.
mm,
I've had in my experience puppies that look like little boxer statues and they don't change. They just
mm,
get bigger and bigger and they're beautiful. I've
mm,
also had little boxer statues that by the time they're 6 months old, I hate them. They look awful. Their heads
mm,
are gone. They're this, they're that.
mm,
By
mm.
the time they reach 11 or 12 months, things come back and I like them.
Right.
So I know pretty much, and I attribute a lot of the consistency
Hmm.
in line breeding because I go in with an understanding of generations behind me of what I've gotten. So there
Mm,
shouldn't be any surprises. There shouldn't. Now, occasionally there are, and very few, but
mm,
there shouldn't be any surprises. What makes line breeding difficult is you get good dogs, but you aspire to do better, and
mm,
it's hard. You
mm,
know, I've been very very fortunate, very fortunate. I've had a wonderful career. I've had some outstanding dogs,
mm,
but every time I have a really good one, I think I want a little bit better.
mm,
I want a little bit.
mm,
So that's hard. A kennel
mm.
type, I think when you start to breed and you see the same thing, and I think I sent you a number of pictures,
Yes, I'm
and
gonna I'm gonna
I
put it up
think
on the screen
I
here.
think a kennel is identified, and these are seasoned breeders. These aren't just breeders that um, you start breeding. You have to be breeding for years before you can establish a kennel type. And
Right.
what that kennel type is every time a new puppy goes into the ring, somebody at ringside will say, that's a Cinnrhee dog. That's a Cinnrhee dog. They look the same.
Right.
And that's where the cookie cutter stuff comes in. You want them to be the same. You
Mm,
want to improve in baby steps, you improve. You don't make giant improvements. You improve in baby steps. So
right.
on the screen right now, what I'm showing you is puppies that I have kept
Hmm.
that I felt were really, really potentially good competitive puppies
Mm,
and the finished product. So
right.
this one right now that I'm looking at is Cecil. As a
Hmm.
puppy, he was just a beautiful puppy.
Mm,
And he grew up to be a very handsome dog and did a lot of winning. Really a wonderful dog. But he wasn't big enough. He was
Right.
only he was only 25 inches at the shoulder on his tippy toes.
Mm.
So never specialed him, never did. This one, he's out right now. This is JJ. Beautiful wide muzzle. And then as his head matured, very, very nice head. And he's young. We just started him out, and he's doing very, very well. He's not a real big dog, but he's a very, very handsome dog. This is Slick. Um, the Indian Boxer Ring group won't know, I don't think they'll know this dog. Sir runs on Lionheart Acre. This was a son of Slick that I specialed in Canada. And I bred a bitch to this Slick Senior. And this was Slick as he would have been in this picture probably 13, 14 months old. And he turned out to be a beautiful dog. But then again, not big enough, not big enough. This is Noah. Now, this is Christine Shackelford's dog. As a puppy, he wasn't quite as strong in head as the other puppies that you saw, but he's a little bit older. But the parameters were all there. Everything was there that needed to be there. He had a beautiful mouth. He was really pretty. And then the headpiece, this is one of my favorite dogs. I think he is absolutely handsome. Really,
Mm.
really handsome. And this is the finished product. So when you're breeding, you know, I often say to people, well, I think there are 4 or 5 in this litter that really look good. No, choose one when you're first starting. Just choose one.
Mm.
Pick that puppy that you think is the best of those 5, place the others, and run with that puppy.
Mm.
Only in all my breeding in the 40 years, I have had 3 litters that I kept multiple puppies. And
Mm.
they all, in all 3 litters, they all went on to be American, Canadian champions. One litter had 2 top 20 contenders, but
Mm-hmm.
that happens very,
Mm.
very seldom, very seldom.
Right. Right. True. Thank you, Medley. Um, Now, my next question is actually about what is the right age to show a dog. Um, Now, and the reason I ask this question is when I started with boxers myself, um, I wanted to show the dog in the 8 to 12 in the puppy class in the 8 to 12 month, right, or 6 to 9 month. I wanted to actually get it out there, finish the dog. But if I look back in time, I said, what, the dog didn't look at its best at that age. Maybe I should have waited till the dog matured, maybe when the dog was 15, 18 months old, or 2 years old, or even 2.5 years old, before she was ready to be shown. I want to ask you this question. Would you prefer an early or a late maturing dog?
I would prefer a late maturing dog. And I say that simply because uh, in my years of doing performing, I have in my own kennel have seen puppies go out that look really, really good at 6 months old. They look great. And I'm talking Canada, I'm not talking
Hmm.
United States. Uh, Out they go, and bingo, in one weekend we're finished. Well, what do I do?
Mm.
Whereas oftentimes the puppy has a mentality of a puppy.
Mm.
It's not schooled enough, it's not trained enough. And when you take that puppy out, a lot of it is a personal emotion. You
Mm.
get excited. Your own, even you said, Krish, I couldn't wait to get that puppy out. It was 6 months old. I want to show that puppy. But you have to. You get disappointed when you lose, and the puppy may not have been ready to be shown. So I'm a believer that if a puppy looks really good at 6 or 7 or 8 months and stays that way, I have no problem with that puppy attaining a championship.
Mm.
But oftentimes, not often, I would say sometimes you see puppies go out, they look dynamite. They finish and you never see them again
Mm.
because they didn't mature into the dog that puppy exuded, that
Mm.
style that puppy exuded. It
Mm.
just didn't. So that's a hard question to ask. When should you start? I would say with novice people, sure, they're excited. They should be. This is a new game to them. They want to get out and see their dog in the ring.
Mm,
But I think you have to be sensible. I think you
mm,
have to be say, how much money do I want to spend losing? I don't
mm,
want to lose. And it's not a cheap game. It's an inexpensive game. So
mm,
therefore, there's where your mentor comes in. And I'll just quote. Many people will know who this person is.
mm,
Elaine Paquette from Quiche Kennels breeds probably some of the top Bouviers in the world. In the world,
mm,
she never takes a puppy out. Never. She said it's a waste of time. I would
mm,
rather she gets from school, she brings them to class, um, but she never takes them out and performs with them until they're at least a year to 18 months. And the wonderful thing about Elaine is she seldom loses. She seldom
mm,
loses. She's got gorgeous dogs. So,
mm,
it's a hard thing. I know people's emotions get in and they say, oh, my puppy finished at 8 months. And I would say,
mm.
congratulations, but so what? So what? What's going to happen? There are a few of those dogs that finish that young that go on to be specials. Very few.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
that's a tough one.
Okay,
That's a tough
wonderful. Yes, it is. It is. It's another midnight,
It
burning
is.
midnight oil question for sure. It is. Now, Medley, in my introduction, I stated that you not only own and handle your dogs, but you also have been a professional handler. Um, for the benefit of viewers in India, dog shows, a professional handler is on the road for almost between 30 to 45 weeks, 48 weeks in a year. They only take a break for 6 weeks in a year. The question, and this question is very appropriate in the Indian context as well, because shows seasons happen only for about 4 or 5 months in a year. They don't happen all through the year. And there is a lot of travel involved. People travel by road, um, as is done in North America. How do you keep your show dogs in the perfect condition? Because I've seen your dogs, the dogs that you showed, to always be in condition. And I always used to wonder, how is that possible? How do you keep them in that condition?
Well, they're exactly what you say they are. They're show dogs. And
Mm,
so therefore, in any profession, I mean, if you're performing on the stage, if you're a dancer, if you're a basketball player, you're a football player, you are constantly working to keep yourself at peak form. You do the same thing with the dog.
mm,
We wash our dogs once a week, whether they need it or not. They're washed once a week, massaged, getting the oils in their skin, massage them. I want to be able to go into that ring with a dog and have somebody say to me, "Oh my God, that dog is beautiful. How do you get its coat like that?" Well, it takes
mm,
work, and when a professional handler is handling a dog, you're being paid for that. So you're doing a job. So do you put all effort into that job and end up having the compliments and the kudos that people say to you at ringside? Sure you do. You should anyway. You should.
mm,
And with my own dogs, I used to feel kind of badly because I kept them in very good condition. I had a huge piece of property and I would put 5 or 6 out at one time and they played and played and ran and ran. And I felt that that was really, really good exercise.
mm,
In the property that I have right now, I have a hill, which is ideal. They'll run up and down that hill, they'll play. But I
mm,
think too, because I handled a lot of American dogs in Canada to finish in the summer. My poor guys got set on the back burner, which was what happens. I don't think you can do it all. I don't think you can be a professional handler
mm,
and breed your own dogs and train them. It's a 100% commitment.
mm,
And so, but I don't want to take a dog in that doesn't look good. I
mm,
won't take a dog in that doesn't look good. So oftentimes when I would get dogs from the States, they would come up, they would, young people saying, I want to finish this dog. And I'd say, give me 3 to 6 weeks
mm,
before I have to take it into the ring so that I
mm,
get it looking the way I want it to look when I
mhm.
walk through that gate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madly. Now, again, this is something I mentioned in the introduction as well. You have been a part, and you continue to be a part of many, many breed clubs. in different capacities. What do you think is the role of a breed club with breed preservation or improvement? How do you think a breed club can play a role?
Well, I think the the fact that we are so scattered geographically makes it difficult. In my own area, I'll just take Western Ontario Boxer Club, and then I'll talk about ABC.
Mm-hmm.
Western Ontario Boxer Club has members from as far south when I was living in Canada as Windsor to the Toronto area,
Mm.
and having meetings was difficult. But this has opened up a whole new. We're starting to do meetings on Zoom now.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is, I always say to my members, these are breeders that are in this club, and I say,
Mm-hmm.
when you sell a dog or place a dog in a show home, mentor that person. Even if you don't have all the knowledge, encourage them to come to our meetings. They don't have to join the club. Just
Mm.
come to our meetings and suggest readings, suggest periodicals,
Mm-hmm.
suggest people to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what ABC does, as far as the breeder mentors go, Pat Healy is excellent at this. She will come to you before a certain class, and she'll say, "I've got a group of people that are aspiring as judges. Will you sit down and talk about such and such?" And not only do I talk to them, but
Mm-hmm.
other established and well respected breeders talk to them. So they get a perspective. They get a good perspective. I think that's vitally important. But I
Mm.
think with new people, the breeders that they're buying the dogs from have to be teachers. They have to be teachers. They have to give them the information they need to encourage them and, I guess, persuade them to continue on. And it's hard. You know what? You know the adage. Oftentimes people come in as novice handlers and they'll say, "Well, why do I go in the ring? Medley Small could take a skunk in and she's going to win."
Mm.
And yes, part of it is politics, and
Mm.
that part will always be there.
Mm.
But at the same time, I remember when I started, my nemesis was Jack Ireland. I
Mm.
couldn't beat him.
Mm.
And that made me encourage me even more. I am gonna beat that guy. And so, but he was a good friend too. But
Mm.
he was established. So
Mm.
there's a lot the breed club can do. And they're doing
Mm.
some. They're
Mm-hmm.
doing some. But
Right.
suggestions, throwing the question out to the members. What can we
Mm.
do now to encourage? What can we do?
Mm.
And I think those things are important.
Wonderful. We're almost at time, Medley. I want to thank you first of all for sparing the time to do this interview. I know you have activities planned for later in the day, and I don't want to keep you for too long. But I want to actually finish this interview with this question. Um, this could be dogs that you own or dogs that you could wish you could have owned from the past to present. Which dog in the past do you wish you could have owned and why?
Well, I think there are a lot of wonderful dogs, and I've been privileged to see many, many wonderful, wonderful dogs out there. But I think the dog that stands out, and I gave this a lot of thought because I never think this way. I always think from the breeding aspect, there isn't a dog out there I want to own. It's the dog I want to breed. And
Mm.
so, but I thought about it, and I think probably I would have to say if I could own any dog from the past, it would be Cachet. When I first saw her at Detroit Kennel Club
Mm-hmm.
with Chick Chickering on the end of the lead, she was she was breathtaking. She was balanced. She had a beautiful head. She could move. She had presence. She wasn't extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she was criticized because she had a water towel marking on her head. She had more weight up here than, but she
Mm-hmm.
was absolutely stunning. And I never could get that dog out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Never could get her out of my head. I thought, oh, if I could breed bitches like that, it would just be wonderful. So I think if any dog that I could go back and say, this is the
Mm-hmm.
dog that I want, I would go and
Okay.
steal it from Lenny Magowitz. That was for sure.
Wonderful. I actually want to stretch this question a bit. I want to hear more about Trapper because you bred to Trapper. And Trapper is behind a lot of dogs in their pedigree, maybe five generations, maybe not even, maybe seven, eight generations down the line. There's Trapper. How was Trapper? How did you like him?
Well, I only saw Trapper twice. I never saw
Hmm.
him before I bred to him. I went totally on what Ben and Shirley told me.
Mm,
And I remember them saying to me at the time, because um, he was producing, he was really, he was significant
mm,
in the whelping box. He was really producing.
mm,
And I remember them saying to me, they used a word that I think there are very few breeders that produce these sires. He was
mm,
prepotent. You could breed him to a tin can and he was going to give you something. And
mm,
that does not come along very often. Very, very
mm,
seldom.
mm,
But when I saw the dog, Krish,
mm,
I was I was disappointed because he didn't
mm,
his phenotype did not exude what I had
mm,
in my mind. He was a
mm,
great dog, but I think his biggest attribute was that he could produce. He could produce.
mm, mm,
Solidly. I mean, he had a beautiful top line. I felt his headpiece was not as strong. And I didn't think that at the time because I didn't know. But now
mm,
looking back, I think, boy, he wasn't the dog that would jump out at you and say, look at that dog in the ring. You know,
mm,
Wilbur Dave's famous Amos. Um,
mm,
I remember seeing him in the ring, and you couldn't miss him. You just couldn't miss him. Whereas Trapper, you might have missed in the line.
mm.
But his strength was in his puppies,
Wonderful. That actually is, very eloquent. And again, I feel it's important for new fanciers. To know about these dogs, these legendary dogs, only which they only would see in the pictures. I want to thank you, Matty, for taking the time to share this knowledge, this wealth of knowledge. Uh, for the benefit of the Indian Boxer Ring viewers and those subscribers of Indian Kennel Gazette, um, Medley's interview is published in the Boxer Special Edition for the month of August. So look out for that book. And you have that interview from Medley. And I've found the session to be extremely informative and useful. And I acquired a lot of knowledge, and I'm sure people who've been watching this interview would have felt the same way. I just want to take a quick moment to thank my team that's working in the background to make this interview or to make interviews like this happen for the Indian Boxer Ring. My team comprises of Kadir Narayan, Satish, Jasimam, and Sushant. Medley, do you have any parting thoughts before we end this interview?
Well, let me just say I appreciate what you're doing. You're doing a wonderful thing for this breed by allowing some of us who have been around, whether we're right or whether we're wrong, it doesn't matter. We have information that we have to impart, and this is giving people that otherwise wouldn't be able to hear this an opportunity to listen and then take what they want and discard what they want. But I thank you very much, Krish. It's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure.
The same here, Medley. Have yourself a wonderful day, and wishing all the viewers to have the same and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.